I got the time right here. I got the time right now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in the internet world,
That's right.
Facebook, YouTube, wherever you tune in to get the real scoop. My name is Don Strong. I am here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am interviewing Brother David from Brooklyn. He has a lot of important information to share with you, the 411 that you will not get in school. Nobody's going to teach you this. You have to go to alternative deep sources. And when we're talking about deep sources, Brother David from Brooklyn is the man. So you're on the interwebs, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your alternative deep sources of truth. This is a good one. Brother David from Brooklyn speaks. Good evening, Brother David. How are you?
Good evening. It's good to be with you and talking about things that people don't hear if they listen to the corporate media, television, radio, or corporate press that exists because they don't want to talk about these things. What I'm going to talk about now is the giant game that's being played. When I say game, those people in charge are very much interested in playing the people or manipulating them to do what they want, which is number one, those who rule the country, the oligarchs that control everything, want to make profit at everyone's expense. So the only way you can do that is play a game on the people. And that is when being done. You're not going to learn that in elementary school, high school, or in college. The people who are exploiting you are not going to tell you what they're doing. Now, what I mean by that is that with a situation like we have here in the United States, we have a small group of people, less than 1%, maybe 1/10 of 1%, who control the whole country. And they control it at all levels, the executive level, the judiciary level, and the executive level. And they do it in the interest of making profit for themselves at the expense of the people. That's why half the people in the country are poor or near poor. And we got to keep that in mind. Here, the richest country in the world has lots of people who are poor or near poor. And you have even 3 people who have as much wealth or an income as half the population. And the way it's done is the game. And the main part of the game is what they call divide and rule or divide and conquer. The only way you can manipulate masses of people is to have them fighting against each other and manipulating them in such a way as to bring attention away from yourself. When the English came over here and stole the land from the indigenous people, that is ethnic cleansing, that's called, and also genocide. There were millions of people who lived there were we call now Indians, who were indigenous people. So they had tremendous wealth in terms of their land, and the people from Europe wanted that. The African people who were kidnapped and enslaved, brought over here to work, were, as slaves, they're working for free. And the beneficiaries of that free labor and resources exist there are the oligarchs that run the country. They're the people who essentially created the Constitution. It was created by people who for the most part, were slave owners who were involved in the slave business. Now, in the period of in the 1600s, we had a situation where poor people from Europe came here also. And these people came to the United States. Some of them, what was called indentured servants, not all of them. And they had Africans who were enslaved and worked for the interests of those who ruled. Now, there was a rebellion in the latter part of the 1600s, and what happened was the ruling class saw that it was dangerous for the African who were enslaved and the Europeans who were essentially enslaved in some way getting together, and that was a bad thing. And that's when they decided to get in the invention of white race. That's something that they invented. And that was invented because you want to split people up. Before that, people from Europe, for example, came from many countries. France, England, Scotland, Ireland, and so forth. And those were all lumped together as one group called white. And they were by not by nationality, but by phenotype, the way people look. And we have to understand that that is the way that you control this whole country, keep people separated and at each other's throat. And then you can control. And they're doing a very good job of it. So essentially, politically, they control, and economically, they control, and they create social conditions that they control, and they can be a small group of people running a whole place with a lot of people, and it's not in the interest of the masses of people who live here. So we have to get through that. What these people who are doing this want to do is keep people ignorant. They want to keep you ignorant. And that's very important to understand that keeping people educated is not what they have really at interest. Their interest is keep people trained. So when you keep people trained, you can train them in terms of what you want them to do and think. And education is somewhat different. It overlaps, but when you're educated, you're able to examine situations, look at different situations where you're in, and analyze and to see who is benefiting and who's not. So we don't have, in terms of my view, the type of education we have, because everybody is separated according to race, this invention of white supremacy, and the beneficiaries of that are the people at the very top. So you got to keep that in mind and understand how this developed and the necessity for those who rule carrying out this policy. We don't have any political parties. We have one party with two divisions, Democrat and Republican. They have both the same interests, serving the needs of those people at the top, and they're run by the people at the top.
Brother David, could I interject?
Yes.
I got a question. So we're talking about this idea of playing the game, and how the ruling class, or the oligarchs, as you describe them, are in the business of keeping the masses of people divided and ignorant of what's going on. So
Exactly.
now, we've touched on this a little bit before, but I'm wondering, to your knowledge, in the history of the planet, on whatever continent, has there ever been a system of government where there was kind of enlightenment and benign governance emanating from the people who were in charge? Anywhere. Greece, ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, pick one. Iraq, Iran, any of
Well,
the ancient civilizations or modern.
I don't have any idea of where has been in the past, but I think it's important for us to understand that all this false talk about democracy and liberty and justice for all, that's all rhetorical nonsense. Because if you're going to run a rapacious capitalist system and an empire, you're not interested in democracy. Democracy and capitalism go together like oil and water. So all that rhetoric that's taught in schools and colleges and so forth is just rhetoric. The point is, there are capitalist countries where the people have some reign on the capitalists and benefit somehow. But the point is that people who rule want to rule, and they want to exploit the people under them. So they're doing it on steroids here because this is the richest economy in the world. And we have to understand that. And we have to understand the whole system of white supremacy racism, which was invented to divide people. And they're very good at it. So what I'm saying about playing the game is understand the game you're in. Don't be such a fool that you don't know what's going on and who the real enemy is. So when you're ruling, you don't want the people to know who the real enemy is.
All right. So what would advice would you give to, you were a teacher for many, many years. You had students, everything from high school up or younger. So if you were talking to a group of people, let's say young people who are, say for instance, just getting into the world of work. They're in high school. They're trying to prepare to have a career or support themselves in some kind of creative employment. What advice would you give? You have such deep experience in your life. How would you coach these young people?
Well, I would tell young people or any people that you really have to study on your own. You can't depend on the ruling class that controls most of the levers of information to give you the right information. You got to search out with books yourselves, and you have to search out information that's not just under the control of ruling class people. And if you do that, you will certainly be ignorant because they're not going to tell you the things that you need to know. So to me, self-study is very important. That's how you really learn. If you do your self-study, you're going to learn much more than you would learn in any of those levels of school. So don't depend on the people, the fox. The fox is the one that controls the school. So if you're a chicken, you got to be careful about going to the fox's school. So the fox is controlling most people, and they don't understand that. They think that the fox is going to educate you, and that's not true. You have to do more than going into his school to be educated. And being educated is an empowering thing. And why would someone who's raking off the labor and resources of people want to educate you about what the real game is? So you have to know about playing the game.
That's awesome. Brother David, do you think we could we could set up some kind of school so that online, so that you could give some guidance for people to do self-study.
I think that's an excellent idea, and that can be done. So you can't expect the ruling class instruments of communication to do that for you. So they don't want to hear the things I'm talking about because that's not in their interest. The interest of the people is to be truly educated and not just be a person who is trained. Just like in the military, people are trained. You're not educated in the military. You're trained. And we want to get out of just being trained, but be an empowered person by being really educated.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brother David from Brooklyn speaking. My name is Don Strong. We'll be doing this program kind of regularly on YouTube and whatever, I don't know, podcast land or stuff like that. But it's been my pleasure to host here this evening, and you'll be hearing more from Brother David from Brooklyn. Good night.
Good night.
You can have the time you're needed. You can just float with me. Ride it, baby, ride it, baby. Ride it up like the sea.